Hey everyone, and welcome. If you're a design student, you know there's one question that can absolutely stop you in your tracks. Well, today, we're going to demystify the architectural concept and give you a clear-cut formula for nailing it every time.
Yep, there it is. That classic question your professor always asks. It sounds so simple, right? But it can be seriously intimidating, especially when you're just staring at a blank page. You feel this pressure to just, pull some brilliant, fully formed idea out of thin air. And man, this one question can totally shut you down. It can lead to a massive creative block. It really is the hurdle that separates a random collection of spaces from a truly cohesive piece of architecture. But what if I told you it's not about some magical flash of genius? What if it's actually about a process?
All right, so if we're going to tackle this thing head on, we first need to get on the same page about what it's even asking for. Let's break down what an architectural concept really is.
The best way to think about it is like your project's DNA. Seriously, it's that one single powerful idea that informs every single choice you make. From the big stuff like the overall shape of the building, right down to the tiny details like the material of the doorknobs. It's your guiding star for everything.
And this is so important to get right. A concept is not just some random cool-looking shape you found or some super complicated philosophical statement that nobody understands. No, it is a clear, guiding principle that directly responds to the real-world stuff, the site, the people who will use it, and what the building is supposed to do.
Okay, so if it's not magic, then how do you actually find this core idea? Well, the great news is there's actually a formula for this, a step-by-step process that turns all that research and analysis into a killer concept.
So here it is, your 5-step roadmap. Look how it starts with deep analysis. You got to understand the problem, get to know the site inside and out, and map how people will actually move through and use the space. Only then, after all that groundwork, do you get to the fun part of generating that core idea and turning it into a diagram. Okay, let's take step 2 for a second. Site analysis. This is where you really put on your detective hat. It's not just about looking at a map, it's about layering all this information. Pedestrian paths, street grids, water, green spaces, you name it. Each one of these layers is another clue pointing you toward the right design solution.
So if you boil it all down, here's the magic formula you need to remember. You take your analysis, all that data from the site and user, you add your own unique interpretation of what it all means, and you translate that into a spatial strategy. That final strategy, that is your concept.
Okay, theory's great, but how does this abstract idea actually become a physical building? Let's look at a few examples of concepts really coming to life. So let's imagine we're designing a public library in a really hot climate. A concept like transition from noise to silence isn't just a nice phrase. It directly leads to a design decision, like layering the spaces. The need for heat protection, boom, that gives you deep overhangs. A desire for natural light, well, that generates a central courtyard. You see? The idea directly drives the form. And this image? It shows that process perfectly. You don't just magically arrive at the final building. You start with the site, you put down a basic mass, and then your conceptual ideas, like let's create a courtyard or let's carve out balconies, literally shape and sculpt the form, step by step. And hey, concepts aren't always about super practical things. They can be more abstract, like the idea of flow. In a project like this, that one simple word can dictate everything. The curving circulation paths, the fluid way spaces connect to each other, and the dynamic flowing shape of the building itself.
The legendary architect Louis Kahn put it just perfectly. Form is what, design is how. Your concept gives you the what, that fundamental idea, the form you're trying to achieve. The whole rest of the design process is just figuring out the how, how you're going to bring that core idea into reality.
So, why are we hammering this home so much? What's the big deal? Well, it's because having a strong concept from the very beginning is the best way to avoid all those classic mistakes that so many students, and yeah, even professionals, fall into. Having a solid concept from the get-go helps you dodge all these classic mistakes. Things like trying to reverse engineer a concept after you've already designed the building, or just throwing around buzzwords like sustainability without any real strategy behind it. A strong concept forces you to stay focused on what truly matters, serving the user and responding to the site. It keeps you honest. All right, let's wrap this up. If you're going to remember just one thing from all of this for your next project, what should it be? Think of your concept as your North Star through the entire design process. It's the framework that keeps you on track. When you get lost in the weeds trying to decide on materials or room dimensions, you can always go back and ask yourself, does this support my core idea? It gives you focus, it gives you clarity, and it gives you a clear path forward.
So I want to leave you with this final thought. Look, any building can serve a function, right? It can give you shelter, it can house activities. That's the easy part. But a strong, meaningful concept, that's what elevates a building from just being a structure into a piece of architecture that actually has a soul. So what will yours be?